slash many other hats on campus. And she's one of the staff in my department who's absolutely amazing. Her counterpart is Tasha Binion, and Tasha is one of these people that I immediately, when I started putting together the agenda for today, I thought of Tasha, because Tasha's in financial aid, and they can tell you more about themselves, that I'm leaving out major gaps, but she's someone who truly cares about her students. She was literally just telling me how, you know, from first year seminars back several semesters, she tells them she keeps their GroupMe app, a way that they can all communicate. We're going to talk about this on Thursday. And she still has her students contact her years down the road. And so these two people are what I consider veteran FYS instructors, but they're also here to talk with you today a little bit about some of the tricks of the trade that they've learned along the way. They also know, I mean, we've got some veteran educators in here, and so, you know, they've seen anything and everything, but in first year seminars, sometimes you think you've seen it all, and then you really see it all. So I'll turn it over to you all, and thank you again for coming to speak.
What do you want us to start with?
Whatever you want to cover, however you want to handle that, I'll trust.
First, I just want to say, like, one thing. I mean, you all are getting told that there are resources here to help you, and like, I knew that going into it, but I also kind of felt like, oh no, like, what am I doing? I'm going to be so lost. But definitely rely on everyone here and all of the veteran instructors. Like, we're here to help. And bounce ideas off of everyone. Like, I think that's been super helpful. Just like, hey, okay, this is the we're going over wellness this week. What are you doing in your class? What did you find that works? Because there might be something that someone else is doing that you really like and you can try in your class and it goes over well. And Michelle and I do that a lot. We talk about the weeks
Every
and
week.
what's happening.
Or if something didn't go well, you can say, don't do what I did today.
That's right.
And then it's fun too, which Tasha actually led this last year, the donations for Thanksgiving, and she got a couple of us other instructors involved, so like that's something you could like partner up with other classes, but definitely getting to know the students and just being there for them and being a mentor to them. I think that's the biggest thing there.
Yeah, we tried a lot of different community things to get them together because they just come to class and a lot of them are like, this is just a class, like I'm not going to have friends in this class, it's just FYS. So throughout the semester we tried different things. So the Helping Hands, we did Dove's Women's Shelter, and we kind of like gave them incentives. And half of them we didn't even have to do, they just were willing to bring all the goodies. So I brought 5 boxes I could not carry by myself to the kitchen pantry. Is that what it's called?
I think so, yeah.
And she cried, she sobbed on me, the lady that's over that. So we had 3 other classes. I wanted to do like an article and get that sent out so that other FYS, but we didn't make that happen. So this year we're going to make it bigger, and I said I'm going to bring 10 boxes this year. So when it gets closer, I think I'm going to send out an email or GroupMe, whatever we decide to do with all the instructors to get everyone involved in some sort of community thing. They really enjoyed that, and they were talking to other classes. The students were like, hey, Tasha Binion's class did this, and so we're going to try to do that this
What
year.
they're talking about too, you could also incorporate, you'll see in the syllabus, a civic engagement assignment.
Yes.
In fact, there's a couple of those. This isn't something that you could elect to do with your class, you know. In the past 2 years, we've had the civic engagement piece really focused on COVID, and certainly we're changing that back this year to be more general, that something that they can impact a college campus or a college student, that type of thing. And some of these service projects you can incorporate into that. So you've got some leeway to decide for sure. Yes. And then, yeah, and then work with Andrew all 52 of our FYS sections. So let's overwhelm him in week 2. But anyway, there's that component. Yes.
I also understand that next year, FYS will be doing a
Day of service.
So,
Yep, we were trying to do that this year and we just couldn't get, it was late getting incorporated, and so yes, next year you'll see a day of service that all FYS students will need to be participating in, and it sounds like Andrew will be coordinating that.
Will we have some way of knowing what their service is, because we're going to have the same students, so will we know some way we can?
Yes, as far as the reading faculty, get with your FYS instructor and find out the direction that they're taking that civic engagement. Now, we'll give some parameters on what needs to be associated with that assignment, but you can let your students take that any way they want to. And if you want to do it as a group, we recommend usually in pairs or teams, but you can do it as a whole class if you deem that appropriate. So I don't even think you all had that as part of your civic engagement. It was just added, but you can, is what I'm saying. So you can do those additional things, but if you can incorporate it or want to incorporate it into the civic engagement assignment, you can certainly do that.
Well, that would be a good way for us to connect the two classes.
Yes, that's right, absolutely.
I think too, making it fun for them, making the class memorable, like, I know my class did it, and several others across campus. At Halloween, like, we decorated pumpkins, and like, I brought in a big bowl of candy and like, let them have that. So just having things like that, because that's a stressful time for them. That's right, well, it's a little after midterms, I guess, but the semester's starting to wind down. So you get through all the information for the week, and then at the end of, like on Friday, you can have that, and it's just something fun for them to do, but also to socialize and just have a good time and get something to attach to class. One of our colleagues, her class actually went and rented kayaks and things from.
She showed us all up.
She
I
did.
kept hearing about Farrah's class.
And she said she didn't have the fun class.
I know, really?
And the students talk so they know what everyone's doing in the other classes, so that's something else too. If you're doing something fun, they'll definitely talk about it. We also, we use Kahoot a lot, which I guess we'll probably talk about that Thursday. Kahoot is like a gaming quiz that you can use, so if you have a week where there's a quiz as the assignment, it's a good way to review the information. I like to start going back to Halloween again. I would throw in like Halloween questions for that week just to mix it up a little bit, and then, or like you could do a TV show or do like a Disney theme or whatever it might be, but then when you're talking to the other instructor, just like that's something you can share. I know we've shared.
Yeah, we all
Kahoots.
shared our documents. We all had the
Yes.
same Kahoots that, whatever week that was.
Yeah,
It was
so,
helpful. We took turns. She did most of them. She liked to do that, so. But yeah, you can share those resources. So if you come up with something, you can share it with everybody if it worked well for your class.
and most of the students really seem to like that because they're familiar with it. I guess they use it in high school some, so that seemed to be something that was really popular. Whenever we were like, okay, it's time for the Kahoot, they would all like grab their phones really quickly and they would be ready to go, so. I think
Yeah,
that's
and they
good.
would like yell, cause you can see like on the screen, if you have it up on your screen as they're putting in their answers. So it was kind of like a competition, and I would bring candy and
Me too.
throw it out to them if they got a question or whatever, and you could tell like if they didn't answer wrong, like they would be the only one, I would still throw candy at them, like I did not give candy to someone, but just do something fun, or if you have someone that's fallen asleep or on their phone, chuck some candy at them, cause you're gonna have that happen, especially if you have a early class or right after lunch. I had a 1 o'clock class. Those are not the best because it's right after they eat. Going back to what Amanda said earlier, I had a morning class. This was before COVID last year because we were still in mask. I couldn't do this. But the year before, I had the 9 a.m. class, so I would do donuts and orange juice. Not often, but whenever they wanted to, just kind of like a little reward or like before final, something if it was going to be stressful. Last year for Halloween, because I'm a mom, I did little treat bags. I also have a son who's born on Halloween, so I was, yeah. So I gave them little treat bags, and I thought that was the coolest thing. So just think of things like that. Hopefully COVID's not going to be a huge issue this year, and we can bring back donuts and things like that.
Yeah, mine have been afternoon classes, so I would do like muffins or something like that that they could grab. Not everyone's gonna get one,
Yeah.
not everyone will take one, but just something small. And some of them will take more than one, but.
And I also did, you don't have to do this, I did $5 Starbucks gift cards out of my own money. I would just do a couple throughout the semester. You don't have to do that, but they really appreciated that. We did different things. I used Kahoot as one. What was the other thing that we did? I don't know if it was you or Jen. It was kind of one of our, like before we got started, we did like a group presentation. They had to like do different things. And whoever had the best like presentation, we would give all of them a gift card, or I know everyone did something different. I did the Starbucks gift cards because they all
I
my
love
Starbucks. So just $5, that's all I did. I did maybe 5 per semester. Not a lot, but they enjoyed it. Or you can do Chick-fil-A anything. I just asked most of them, and I'll get to that in just a second, what they all liked, and it was Starbucks, obviously, was the biggest.
One thing that I found, and again, every class is different, but I really like talking about the national holidays. Like, I have a calendar in my office.
It was helpful
so
to me.
Me too.
that has what they are, and like, I would use that for attendance, or like, just to get them like going at the beginning of class. So, for example, there was one time, it was like National Pie Day, so we had a debate in the group meeting of whether pie or cake was better. And so like that took up some time, but it got them talking and got them just engaged a little bit before we started the lesson, so they always see it. I had some of them ask me like, what's the national day today? So if you don't know what it is, you can Google it. There is a website that has like a list of like several different things going on every day, so that's helpful. I have it bookmarked if anyone wants it. Just you can shoot me an email after and I can get that to you.
Have you talked about icebreakers? I'm sure people.
Very little,
Okay.
so if you want to introduce that, I would like that.
Yeah, so
for
I'll
sure.
talk about pros and cons. So, we did an icebreaker every single class period. So I had Monday, Wednesday, Friday. So every single class, we did something before we got started. So for example, one day, if I didn't do the group me where we would have them send something, I would say, okay, Tasha, tell me your favorite holiday. And we would go around the room, just things so I could get to know them. Then we would do some where we would stand up. My peer leader actually did most of the icebreakers. So you're gonna wanna utilize your peer leader, we'll talk about that. So we would have them in groups. We would Google, you can find a million icebreakers online. They liked it when they could get up and like face each other, and we would just do random things. They would have to go back and forth versus just sitting there and telling me an answer. They didn't really like that. So we would try to get up and do different things. However, I thought they were going well, but when it came to our evaluations, so many people thought that they were so cheesy. Like they did not like the icebreakers, and it hurt my feelings. I'm like, I know, I can tell all these things about you from these icebreakers. Like that was the point. Not all of them. A lot of them enjoyed it too, but you might see that. I mean, it's something you want to do to get them to be engaged, but you're gonna have some of those that.
There will be the naysayers.
Yeah, there's gonna be a few. Still do them, I mean, cause you'll do your evaluations and you can look at that. I still did them regardless, and I knew which students said that, cause I could tell during the icebreakers. Still do them, cause I thought they were fun, and I participated in them too. I didn't just let them do it, I would get right in there with them.
Yeah.
Those students probably need it the most.
And they do. And what's funny about that, Tasha's talking about engagement, is I used to do a thing called Four Corners, and it was another one of my staff that did that. And it was literally, it got them up, just like you were saying, and it kind of woke them up if they were falling asleep. And I would do it at different times in class.
Yep.
And, it would be silly things. And I would tell my peer leader, come up with 4 corners today, And so it would be favorite ice cream, here's chocolate. And it was an opportunity for the students to connect. Because they may be sitting across the room and this person's now in their corner, and so it's just a fun little thing for them to do to connect. Because again, what I've not talked a whole lot about today, which you probably talked a little bit about on Thursday, and we'll talk more about on Thursday, this coming Thursday, is the whole concept behind this class, other than giving them all the information they need to be successful, is that they make those personal connections, not only with you, now that's a goal we want them to have, but with other students in the class too, because that's how they make their home away from home for the next 4 years. So very good on those.
And where I'm in financial aid, I bonded with my students more because they all need help with financial aid. And I literally want to help every single person. I guess that could be a fault of mine. I get that from my papaw. Some say it is. So I let them know, obviously up front, as you all will, who you are, what department you're in. So when I said financial aid, they all kind of like perked up. A lot of them are going to say, my mom and dad takes care of that.
So I was just
They're like, I don't need that financial aid information. Like, no, like you need to be doing this mostly on your own, and then mom and dad if you need help. There's a whole week on financial aid. Obviously, it's my favorite week, and I could probably take 3 weeks to go over that stuff, but it's okay. So I bond with them that way, and like I'm still getting messages today on that group me. If they don't, you'll have some students who won't do the GroupMe app. So they'll email me. I have students that have my office number that will still call me. So in 18, so I guess students from 19, because 18 graduated. So now, like, I have a couple students from 19 who are still contacting me. I have students from this past fall that are still contacting me. So you want to make that personal bond with them. That way they think, okay, I want to be able to contact Tasha 2 semesters from now if I need help. And not with just financial aid, I'll help them with anything that they have questions with. I let them know up front that I'm their person that they can come to for anything, and if I can't find it, like if I don't have the answer, I will find it for you. For like housing, I can't help them with housing, but I will get the resources that they need. Yes, yeah. So I know nothing about housing. I put on the housing waivers and that's it. So I'll give them contact information.
That's why I know your name.
Yes. What was your name?
Casey Quickle.
Okay. I work with Stephanie a lot. Is she the assistant director? Is she not there? She just emailed me.
Yeah, I was working with her for waivers.
No, she sent me the RA waivers, like to put
Oh,
on
gotcha,
it.
gotcha, gotcha.
Okay, I was like, oh, I hope her name is Stephanie.
Yes, it is.
And you'll also have students who will not ask you for help, but you can tell they need help. So I would send a message on GroupMe and say, pre-registration's coming up, do you need help with this? Because you can just tell, like, I don't know, it's hard to explain. I can pick up on the cues if they're not engaging in class, or because you'll have students that are like, oh yeah, like I need help, and there's a lot that are going to be afraid to ask for help. I'm going back to financial aid, especially when it comes to financial aid. There's a lot of students who need that assistance, but they're terrified to ask for help because it's embarrassing. Like, my parents don't make a lot of money. I'm one of 12 kids. I'm the first to go to college. So just kind of reach out if you have a feeling, and if they say everything's fine, then you tried and you reached out to them. But 75% of the time, they're gonna write back and say, yes, I need that help, thank you for reaching out to me.
One thing that I did as far as going over information, if you have a week that's a quiz week, and there's something that you know, you have to tell them that's in that quiz, always, you can go in and review the questions for the quiz beforehand, that's how like you build the Kahoots and stuff, but I would go in on the PowerPoint and bold it, just so I would know, okay, that's something you've got to make sure you say and you explain. Not that we don't explain the others, but just want to make sure you go into a lot of detail about that so they know the answer. Because they don't know why it's bold, but I do, so that was something that I did to kind of help me along, just to make sure that that was something that got covered in detail.
And I just brought an example. The week before class, I sent an email to all my students. So for example, I won't read all of it. I just say, hello, welcome to fall 2022 FYS. I'm the instructor. I go over what FYS is so they know, and then I tell them a little bit about me. So I would say I'm starting my 16th year at MSU, what office I work in, a little bit of my background. I talk about my husband, my 2 kids, and then I tell them that I attach a form. I don't know who started this form. Did I do this?
I think you did do that.
Okay, I don't even
3
remember.
years back.
So I tell them that I'm
4 years
attaching,
back.
yes, a student information sheet. So I guess I created this, I don't remember. And I let them know if they'll fill it out ahead of time, send it back to me. That way I can read this before class starts and I know a little bit about them. So I have on here their name and ID number, name that you want to be called. Because a lot of times they don't want to be called that, and I'm terrified to say their name and they're going by something different. So I always put that on there. That way I know before class what they want to be called. Hometown, if they live on campus or off campus, their birthday, cell phone number, major, their career. And on here they have 3 boxes. They can say they're dedicated to pursuing the career that they chose. They don't know. They think this is what they want, but they're not sure. So that gives me an idea on if they're going to want to change their major later. And then I thought this was neat. You can do anything on this area. I put name 2 things that cost $3 or less, but have the ability to make your day. So mine's chocolate and coffee. So just, little things like that. I have on here, what are your obligations before and after this class? I have class, free time, homework, lunch, whatever. I just want to kind of know what they're doing. What do you want to get out of FYS? Is there any worries that you have about college life or classes? What are your life and career goals? Which they'll explain that in their why. What stresses you? And then what is your favorite music? artist, song, movie, TV show. So just kind of serious questions, but fun questions. And this gives me a quick, and I can email this to everybody.
Send it to me and I'll push it out.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah.
And then if you want to update anything, if there's something you want to add, but these were just the basic things, and then you'll get to know them more whenever you do the icebreakers.
To give you a teaser for Thursday too, pre-semester contact is something we'll talk more about on Thursday. But we definitely hope that you can find some time, even if it's just to send the email, and I say not just, because that's a big component, but to make contact with the students before the semester arrives. You should now at this point be able to see your roster. Now keep in mind that we are still manipulating schedules on some students because we have some designated FYS sections that are for certain pockets of students only. Heron, for example, the Heron Scholars. Success Academy students, they have their own sections. Kind of like little mini learning communities. And so we're making sure that all of those are clean. And so there may be some changes to your roster. So I wouldn't heavily commit to that just yet. I would wait till next week and I'll give you the cue as to when we're saying, okay, this should be clean at this point. But we'll talk more Thursday about pre-semester contact.
One thing that's helpful for me with the roster, we'll have their ID picture on there. If you can print that out, that's gonna help, especially like the first couple of weeks, trying to remember who they are, especially if we have multiple sections. And I don't know if we have to do this now, but when COVID first, like in 2020, we had to do a seating chart just for contact tracing. And so I find though, like last year, we didn't really have to, but they don't move because they're used to that from
They
high
get
school.
comfortable,
So,
yeah.
that was a good way too. Like I went into the room beforehand and just drew like a map of the room and I wrote in like their names and the spots. And that helped me remember their names initially too.
They really do like to know that you have gotten to know them just a bit before. No, they're gonna be forgiving, obviously. They're not gonna expect that you know everybody the first day. Nobody should be expected to do that. But that pre-semester contact will help you a little bit because they'll respond back to the email and they'll say, hey, I've got this going on, or I already know I have to miss class this certain day. And so you'll get to know that student just by virtue of that contact.
The second or third week of class, I would, myself and my peer leader, we would start at the front of the room and then say, okay, we're gonna go without looking at the roster, see if we can name everybody. That was fun. But then I also had the students do that because they're like, in all the classes I've had, they all are like this, they're looking forward. So they're not ever looking behind them to see who's behind them. So like after we did probably a month worth of the icebreakers, cause you know, sometimes if they have to turn around and look while the person's talking, or if we did the group, then I would have them say, okay, Michelle, you see how far you can get. And you'd be surprised on, they don't make it past the first table and you've been in class for a month.
Yeah.
So you can do that one, that's a good one. And then we would do it like, I don't know, I guess around 8 weeks. And then they would be able to almost get everybody. So that's something to think about too, is you need to know their names, but also I would expect them to as well because they're in that class together. Yeah. And some can do it better than others because they have a good memory. I do not. I struggle with names. So I like really, and when last year when we were in math, that was terrible.
Yeah.
I mean, I had their names, but it took me a little longer, which they were fine with that. But yeah, if you're not good with names, that's a good way constantly like go through them. So finally, by the end of class, obviously, I could do it without even seeing them in their seats, like physically. So.
The sheet they fill out with all that information, I know this is kind of asking probably the wrong time, but could we get a copy of that
Yes.
from our partners so we're not asking
Sure.
the same question?
Absolutely, yeah. I think that would be
We're
good.
teaching them.
We can talk with the ones who teach the FYS portion and recommend that they get that. And they also need to explain too, as an e-instructor, that, you know, it'll be a partnership or a partnering of the co-teaching model. And so you might want to introduce that in a way that the students will understand when you introduce yourself. And make sure that, they know that they're part of it too.
We could do some sort of reading.
Mm-hmm.
survey question.
Yeah, because we
That
had already
was
talked,
interest,
that we talked
interested
about.
prior.
Yeah, that would be
That
good.
would help us
We
to
would have
know.
their information, and then
Yeah.
we could, you know, share that back with our partner.
Well, we can certainly work on that. We'll talk about that after to see if we can firm that up. Good idea. So I have a question for you all to answer.
Mhm.
You know, a lot of the people in this room are seasoned educators, and not everybody is though. What are some tricks of the trade that you wish that you knew when you first started this, your first semester, that you know now, in terms of specifically to teaching FYS?
I think for me, it's just like being nervous. Like, I don't know, for me, like, and sometimes even, like, still now, like, I get up in front of a group and I get nervous, but they're just as nervous as you are in that room. That's their first semester here, so I think
Yeah.
it's a learning process together for sure. And being able to, like, read the room is definitely helpful. If you're watching a video and you're noticing that they're not paying attention, like, I will sometimes pause it and get them up. All right, let's stretch really fast, let's walk around, let's do something. Just kind of watching them and see where they are. Because like Tasha said, depending on what time of day your class is, that might have a big impact. But
Yeah, and not only that, you're gonna have some that are not taking this class seriously, and
Oh,
that's
yes.
sad, because it is a lot of good information, and they need to know this information, they just don't think that they need to know that information. They want to know, why can we not just do this as an online course for 3 hours or something? Like, I've had students say, why can I not just do this online, like, why do I need to come to class 3 times a week? And sadly, like, I have like one each semester that's like hardcore, like, I don't want to be in this class. They still come to class every time, and I try to make them engage, but you'll have them, they'll just sit on their phone, and like Amanda said, I'll stop and get them up, but they'll still get up with their phone, and I'm like, that's fine, that's fine.
See, I'm a little more hardcore in my approach with the phones. I tell them, I'm a topic surfer, and so I literally, and you know, I'm 29, plus a whole lot more. But I have difficulty staying on task when I'm really involved in a lesson, because what's coming into my brain is all these other things that I need to add to. And so I tell them, if you're on your phone, it's distracting to me. And so I don't want to waste our time in class for me having to get back to my train of thought. And I'll start out with that. And then I'll get more direct with it. I mean, I'll even go over and tap them, or, you know, I'll point to the phone. I'll walk over to their desk and point to the phone. And they usually take the clue. If that doesn't work, I literally say, hey, Sean, can you stay with me after class for a second? And, you know, they do. And most of the time I say, you know, I know something may be going on. Maybe you need to communicate with friends or family if, you know, something like that's the deal. But I really need you involved in class because I really want to hear your perspective. And usually that works. But now I'm going to tell you, we've had Success Academy students this summer. I told you that we had 47, and it's a sampling of the 1,260, you know, that are currently in FYS. We'll probably have about 1,100 when it shakes out. But anyway, they are truly still high school students in their mentality. They are truly still not used to being disciplined. And I don't know if it's the COVID phenomenon or what the deal may be.
They allow you to have the phones out in high school.
It really blows me away. And
Yeah,
so
me too.
that is something that you're going to have to address, not just the phone, that will be part of it, but you're gonna have to address some of these behaviors that are truly high school mentality, and tell them, you know, it's not a miraculous transition from literally in, you know, up to June, you were a high school senior, to now a college student, flash forward all the way to August. There's no miraculous transformation that takes place. That, you know, in society, we look at them when they land on our campus in our college classes as adults. They are not. And so you may have to be really overt with some of those tactics to address the behaviors that they have, because they are not going to be programmed to be adults for you. Ellen?
Wouldn't it be kind of easier to start out kind of harsh, like,
Yes.
all right, so
Yeah.
everybody, your phone's turned off.
Yes.
Put it at the corner of your desk.
Yep.
I don't want to see you touch them. I
Yep.
don't want to see that.
Yep.
Because it's insulting. And it may be something that they were allowed to do. I think discipline went in the toilet well after I left high school. Because we were like, oh man, teachers are the best and we, honor them and, oh, they don't do that nowadays. But you know what I'm saying?
I do.
What, but that's just, that's basic respect. And if they know the rules to begin with, then you start out.
And consistent with
Yes.
that, and if they veer away from that, bring it to their attention. So, yeah, absolutely. Casey?
Yeah, I get it. I know people have feelings with their phones. I've had so many people that use their phone for accommodations,
Mhm.
like fidget spinners. We have a lot of students that struggle with ADD, ADHD, and like having something else on their phone, like does a thing. And also for me, it's like they're adults. If they make the decision to be on their phone and not pay attention, like that's cool too, but you're gonna fail your quiz and that's a big problem.
And I think that's an area, when I first started talking, that you all get to decide how you deal with that in your class. But I would recommend consistency.
Yeah.
And there's no right or wrong here. It truly is preference. But just remember, whatever you decide to do also sets the stage for what they'll likely do in other classes too.
Right.
And I can tell you, there are other classes on this campus where they will be sent out of class with that phone.
And I tell them that too up front, like some of the professors, especially when I had them, like you will be out in the hallway, you will be gone, like they will embarrass you, you will never use your phone again in class with some of them. Sometimes it works, and I didn't have like a ton that were on their phone. The last couple years, yes, I just feel like, I don't know. They always
It's
have
been
their
a
phone.
different world
It
the
has
last couple of
been,
years.
and I blame COVID for all of it, but we'll just keep going back to COVID. Like in 18, 19, I didn't have cell phone issues. It was 2021. And
That's kind of when the high schools made the switch to let kids have their
Yes,
phones too.
yes.
You saw those kids coming in,
yeah,
so they're used to having them. And I think I taught juniors and seniors in my education courses that I taught. And they do the exact same things that you guys are talking about and the freshmen do. I mean, I think if we know them and we have a relationship with
Right.
them and we understand, because I have kids that would work on their computers the whole time, but they're taking notes.
That's how they're
and
taking notes, absolutely.
And that's a whole different, I mean, I am a pen and pencil note taker, but I think as long as we're walking around the room and we know what they're doing, we can see what they're doing.
I totally agree. And that's how I function too.
Yeah,
But you can honestly tell the difference
Yeah.
if they're totally just zoned out. But I think Casey has a good point, that we have to, as part of making them understand they're the adult, they know that they're paying for this class, and they can either putz it off and not participate, or they can actually get something out of it. So I think that's a good point you brought up.
That was a conversation I had when I taught at a previous institution, was really just that, like, you're paying for this is for your major, you literally have to pass this
Yes,
class
yes.
in order to graduate, so like, and like, granted, I had participation points and things like that, but it was one of those pieces, I was like, if you make the decision, because I don't necessarily need to know the integral pieces of your life, but like, if you had something happen at home or
Mhm.
whatever, I don't need to know that if you don't wanna share it with me, so I'm not
Right.
gonna volunteer you to, but also like,
But it has the same weight as a math class.
That's
or any
right.
other class.
And that's a good component to remember too about this course, is this is a required course in their gen ed area, which is 36 credit hours, which is, and so they have to pass first year seminar. So, yeah, that's a good way to look at it. So I'm glad that you all brought that out too.
Personally, the group,
Group me.
Group me.
I have it on my phone, but
Okay.
I still
Yeah,
don't
it's
know what
amazing.
that is.
So,
That's new for me.
what we're going to do, and I'll talk more about this Thursday, I've tried to be very careful and not, bore you all with things you might hear Thursday too. But as new to the FYS world, I literally live and die as far as connecting with my students by GroupMe. So I encourage everyone, we're going to do a GroupMe instructor group. And you don't have to participate, but I'm gonna encourage that everybody does, because we haven't done that the past few years as the instructor group. But I enjoyed it too, because when things were, coming up or down the pike as far as updates or things that all students might be interested in knowing, then you better believe that one of the instructors was in tune with it and say, hey, did you know that this is going on today? And that will give you an opportunity to push that out to your students. And so, anyway, I'm hopeful that we can do that. Everybody will need to opt in, and if you don't want to, that's perfectly fine. But I do strongly encourage your usage of GroupMe for your class, because again, back to the phones that we were talking about, you know, this is something that they're more comfortable communicating with their phone, and you would believe how active some of the students will be on GroupMe and not even say a word in class. So,
And then they also use that, they'll create their own groups, like within their group, and like, so say when they do the civic engagement, and if they do it in groups of 3 or 4, they'll make their own GroupMe, and then they'll become friends with them, and then they'll communicate that way, so it helps them branch out with, and not just people in our class, if they have to do with any of their friends that they meet. And also in the GroupMe app, I literally post everything in there. So like if we had, for example, when we did the vaccination scholarships or whatever, we have the slides of that, I would post that in there, like, hey, they want a, what was it, $250 book scholarship? So I'd post that in there, the link, advanced registration.
And I would, SGA, they're really good about making the posters with all the events for the month, so I would go find that and take a picture and send it in there too.
Yeah, the
every month,
finals
so they
week
can see what's
schedule for them to do activities to de-stress during finals week, the pancakes, anything going on in the community that was posted that they wouldn't necessarily see.
we've tried to, for FYS purposes, the campus calendar, Xavier and Lynn have worked together to create a tool that each week you will have access to know what events are going on campus, the big ticket things. And so, like Tasha's saying, there's still other events. There's so much going on that students don't take advantage of to participate in. And a lot of times it's because they don't know. But there's not really an all-inclusive venue to pull all this in. But Xavier and Lynn have worked really just, I think it's more like a miracle to be able to get all this stuff compiled. And you'll be seeing that too whenever you get access to the shell.
It's in the bottom, in every module, every weekly module, at the very bottom, there's a link that'll take you to show you everything that's happening this week. And that same place, you can move ahead throughout the semester to see it. It's actually just the Campus Activities Board website. So
I would also post, like, if there was basketball, football, soccer, whatever game was going on, if it was a home game, I would say football field, 7:30 Friday, who wants to go? I did attend a couple events just to see, like, if any of the students would come. Some do, and then they'll have friends. It's free for them, so encourage that, like, to get them to go to those events. And then you would also have, they'll all write back, like, yeah, I'll be there. Who wants to go eat at the Rock before or whatever? So you'll get more engagement that way. You don't have to do something with them, but I encourage you to go to one sporting event with them and say, hey, I'll be here if anyone wants to come. Do they want to hang out with their FYS instructor? No,
You're
but
pretty cool. She's hip.
I'm hip. I don't know if they find it embarrassing or not. Some think it's cool that you're willing to go because how many professors or whatever, I don't know, some do go, but I don't know, they just like to see you outside of class too and not be so serious and just kind of enjoy anything. We did a fuzzy duck, a duck, like for Starbucks, we met for Starbucks. We had a couple classes outside. We would pick an area and like a week that wasn't so heavy where we had to use the screen. Like say, if I had a Monday, Wednesday, Friday class on Fridays, we would do an outside just to kind of get fresh air before cold weather hit. They really enjoyed that. We did lunch at the Rock before class. What other things did you do? I know you did those
We were
things
trying
too.
to-
Did you do bowling or did Farrah do that?
She did, we were gonna try to do a hike around the lake, but we went to like, it was just not a good time to do it there. It was kind of like grown up a little bit, so we didn't wanna risk it, but like that's something that you could possibly do
Yeah, and the
as a
ropes
class.
course, like we tried to get that scheduled last year. It's really hard to do.
It is.
I
I think
think,
they don't have any students that
I
have signed up
know.
to do it,
Yeah.
like to.
They don't have
to
anybody
cover it.
trained
I
and
know.
instructed right
Yeah.
now.
right,
what I
yeah,
meant,
so, but last year when or was it the 19? I don't know what year we're in. One of the years when we were able to do it, like stuff, they're like, no, I'm afraid of heights. I'm like, oh, it'll be so much fun, let's go do this. Can't get anybody to do it. So there it sits.
Isolation.
That's what it is, yeah.
Yeah.
Big part of it.
And I know those events that happen on campus that you're telling them about, that's a good conversation starter for the next class too. Like, oh, did anyone go to this? What do you know about it? And I know sometimes too when we have the people at the bell tower, that's always the big
Oh, yeah.
conversation piece too. So be prepared for that. But yeah, I'm trying to think of one of the, like, Eagle Friends. Like definitely heavily promote that, and then after that's over, your next class meeting. Well, who went? What did you learn? Who did you talk to? And like that's a good way
The
to
career
list it.
fair on campus,
fair.
we always
Yep.
really hype that up too.
And you'll have student athletes in your class. Some of them will get to play, some won't, but it's really cool if they have their classmates that go and attend. Like if you have soccer, if you have a student that plays soccer, she might enjoy that her classmates came and supported her.
I just wanted to say that the link that it will go to will also show sporting events.
Oh,
Very good.
awesome.
Excellent.
I was just checking that to be sure.
It'll be on each week, there's a link, and each week, the shell, it'll be where you can just click on it and see what those events are.
I had one semester, I had a theater student in my class, and so this was when they did the play at the ropes course, and so like we went to, it was a drive-in, like they were in a car, so we weren't like together, but we went to go watch it, and it was fun to support him.
The Star Wars group. Anybody know who I'm talking about?
The order.
The saber.
Yeah. So that was really cool. We had several students that actually went, I don't know what nights it is this year, but like Wednesday nights at 9 o'clock or whatever, they would go out here and you would see them. Like they would have their $5,000
Lightsabers.
yes, and they would put on like a little show. So students would talk about that the next class period. So just encourage that whenever you're talking about groups and organizations. There's something literally for everyone. And even if they weren't into that, it was nice for them to go and see that just because they're in Star Wars outfits and they're having fun out there, living their best life.
What was amazing to me is learning that there's literally 130 plus clubs and organizations on our campus. That's one of them. But, and I would tell the class, you know, even if you think that there's not a club that's focused on your interest, I bet you there is, and if there's
Oh,
not,
yeah.
start one.
Yep.
And we would go to the student activities websites and see how they could actually start a club or an organization. And essentially, in a nutshell, they just have to have a very rudimentary charter and an advisor. And so they can literally start those themselves. And so they really get into that type of thing when they know that there's interest here for them.
There are 183 organizations on
83.
campus.
Wow, 50 more than I thought.
And you can actually look at the list and sort them by
Interest?
category. So like academically based or like club sports, things like that.
Yeah, very good.
Does that include Greek life?
Yeah.
It does.
Is that a link that you have put somewhere, Xavier?
No, but I'll make a note to do so. Wait. Yes, fraternity and sorority life, Greek life, so it's not under G, it's under.
I mean, you were talking about group advisors, but one thing that might be helpful too, like once you go through and find out the majors for each of your students, is familiarizing yourself with which advisor works with that area. If you've been through the mental health first aid training, you know that sometimes you have to tap somebody else in to help. So if you have to, and you can upload those alerts about students in your class if you run into that. But knowing who that is, so you can quickly pull that in, because they might, if they're not comfortable talking to you, maybe they've had 500 conversations with their advisor, and so that's someone there that can help. So I think that, knowing who, and that also helps around advanced registration time. I always ask my class, being an advisor, I always ask my class, okay, do you have an appointment with your advisor yet? No, okay, let's set that up right now, so you can get your schedule for the next semester, so.
Michelle, is that something I should add to this? I didn't even think about putting, because most of the time they don't know who their advisor is. Would they know at that point?
They should know,
Okay.
because we've made advisor assignments literally almost immediately
Okay. I'll add
after
that on
SOAR.
here
But
then.
yes, that'd be good.
Okay.
Yeah. Anything else?
Can't think of anything. Do you all have any questions for us about anything? I know you all are getting a lot of info.
No, it's so much info. And a lot of it's trial and error too. Like, you're gonna try things that work for us may not work for you.
But that's definitely a good thing about talking to other instructors, because you can get ideas, or it's like, oh, well, I never thought of that, and or you might give them an idea that works really well for them too. So, like, and if you all think of questions later, don't hesitate to reach out. Of course, I know we're gonna have that big group meet with everybody in it, but I'm more than happy when you're like, hey, how do I do this? You can reach out.
Thank you all so much.
Does anybody have any
Oh,
questions?
I do have one other tip. If you, I keep a binder, especially if you have multiple classes or multiple sections, and if you keep it all together, you just have to grab one thing. You don't have to worry about grabbing the wrong thing. But my roster, the syllabus, my seating chart, all of that I kept in here. So just,
Yes.
And you usually teach two, so not just one.
that's a good way. And like if they have something that they've turned in, or if there's something you're going over in class, or like if you have the questions to the quiz out, so you wanna make sure that you covered everything, like it's a good place to keep all of it.
Yeah, I keep my information sheets in there, and then if they have any accommodations, like if they have to test longer, whatever that may be, I keep that in there.
Or if they're an athlete, you'll get a letter letting you know the days that they're not gonna be there.
Yeah.
It's a good
Can you
place to
think of
keep it all
anything else?
together.
There's so much. I know we're missing
I
stuff,
appreciate everything that you covered though. It's very helpful.
and I will get this to you by the end of the week.
Okay. Thank you so much, Tasha. Thank you, Amanda. We appreciate you coming. Thank you, ladies.
Thank you.
You're welcome to hang out, but I know you're both busy.
If you want to answer my emails, I will stay.
No, we could trade, I guess, trade emails.
I think yours should be just as bad as mine.
We'll see you all Thursday.
Thank you. So hopefully, the reason that I asked them to come too, and you're kind of getting the idea, is really the big picture here is that engagement piece, that we want the student to feel connected to you and to them, each other. And so there's little things. It's not lofty, costly types of initiatives that you have to be so, burdened with labor to put in place. It's literally, question of the day, or, those types of things that make it fun, that you really want. I'm not saying that, you have to downplay the rigor of the course. You shouldn't ever. But you want them to enjoy the concept of coming to your class, because that's what'll get them there. And the naysayers can sometimes, now you're gonna have those that think it's just a waste of their time. You will have those students. They'll still do okay generally, unless they're ones who just don't want to do anything. And you might have some of those, unfortunately. But by and large, even the naysayers, they will get something out of this course, and they'll tell you what that is, so it's a benefit in a lot of ways. And sometimes they're not to the developmental level where they can understand that something as basic as this course in their mind is something they really need. They may think it's so just beneath them, and they really, if they'll open their minds enough to allow the opportunity to learn more about how it is that they can be successful here, and how this class can be utilized in all their other classes and throughout their career, then they'll get it. And so many do, and it's awesome when those light bulbs go off, for sure. So what we're going to talk about now, Dr. Couch will be joining us soon. I'm going to skip down to talk a little bit about resources for first-year seminar instructors. The administrators over the course, essentially, Dr. Couch, she's at the helm. She's the associate provost, and so first-year seminar is something that she has worked on for several years now. And like I told you, she chairs the subcommittee. That's fine. I know what you've got going on, so you go right ahead. Thank you. The first-year seminar subcommittee, she chairs that, and so she works with those faculty that I told you are kind of like steer the oversight of this class. So that's her role. Then there's myself, and then Sarah Larson that you would have met on Thursday if you were here. If you have issues or concerns or questions, use me as a first line of defense. I'm absolutely happy to help you. Now, I had a whole full-time gig and then some when we took this on. So I say that to say it might take me a little bit of time to respond, But usually, if you email me, I can get back to you. Sometimes it's that evening, but I'll try to get back to you as quickly as possible. But this is why I'm encouraging usage of that group me, because if it's a question that you feel comfortable sharing with others and you don't mind who responds, then the group me option will be a good option, because veteran instructors probably have already experienced whatever it is you have questions about, and they would get to it maybe quicker than I. But if you have questions that you want addressed by, I guess, the leadership or administration of first year seminar, then you can always refer those to me. A lot of times I have to defer to Dr. Couch, and Sarah can assist with that as well. So use us as resources, because we want you to have all the support that you need to never feel like you're on an island in this class. I put academic advisors on here. All of my staff, every single student that's going to be in your class, I would venture to say will be assigned to one of my staff for academic advising purposes. The academic advisor can be a huge resource for you too, because my staff are charged with, and Amanda's one of them, she works in my department, my staff are charged with approaching the support of our students from a holistic perspective. And so all of my staff are also teaching first year seminar, and they teach in other areas too, a lot of them. But they are trained and skilled in the holistic approach to understanding success of students. So you can contact them. If you are starting to get a concern about a student's attendance, now we're going to talk Thursday about the actual tool that you can use to submit your concerns. But a lot of times people like those personal connections too. And so your advisor or your student's advisor would be an excellent resource for you to utilize and reach out to. You can ask, because Tasha's going to add, she said on that form that we're going to send to everybody, it'll have who the advisor is. And if the student doesn't know, you can always contact me and I can get you connected to that advisor. But the advisor will be somebody who will reach out to that student, because we probably already are. Because here's what happens. We have a tool, it's called Faculty Experience. Again, we're going to talk about this on Thursday. But they may have already expressed concerns in another venue or another class. And so when you reach out to them as well, or when you submit your concerns, then the advising staff are going to start to make some connections there to say, okay, we may have a problem taking hold with this particular student. So use the advisor, pick the advisor's brain. In a lot of cases, the advisor that's assigned to that student may very well know that student's situation, because we had started working with these students well before they came to SOAR, in many cases in April and throughout the summer. And so they may have already told their scenario to their advisor, and so they may have pieces of information that they feel comfortable sharing with you, and vice versa for you to them, that will help to support that student from a more holistic approach. So the advisor is another resource. There's a whole slew of campus resources that we've talked about today, from counseling and health services, I've mentioned several times, to, Casey just left us, the housing office, if they live on campus. We've talked about the resources as far as like Eagle Essentials, that's here in Ada. The Student Activities Office is really responsible for that. That's somewhere where a student can come to get access to the essentials that they need for daily life, from toothpaste and a toothbrush to food, to feminine products, to bath wash, to everything in between. And you realize that we're in an area where our students, many of them come where they don't have the socioeconomic privileges of some other students maybe. And so if there may be a level of embarrassment or lack of knowledge that these resources are available. So I want you to be knowledgeable of that. And there's no questions asked. That is supposed to be staffed throughout the day, the business day, and then even sometimes after hours. The contact for that, is that still Jane Tenure? Jane Tenure is the person who oversees Eagle Essentials. But anybody in student life can access that storage unit. They don't have students sign in. They don't track what the students take. Literally, this is one time when they can take as much as they need and not feel that, they have to be embarrassed of that or and they can come as often as they need. So.
And who runs that, did you say?
It's here in Ada on the second floor, Jane Tenure.
Okay.
Tenyer.
Yeah.
And so that's a definite resource that I wanted you to be familiar with. Also, I do a lot of professional development for my staff, as I mentioned, to try to make sure that we are approaching student success from a holistic perspective. I will push out some of these informationals that we're gonna have for the fall. I've got a couple that I've been thinking about. A lot of them are free, and so I can open that up to other people too. So via email or our instructor group me, I will push out information, and if you're available from time to time and want to participate, certainly you're welcome to do that. So I just wanted you to be aware of that. And then I also, years ago with first year seminar, we would do, I think it was monthly, just lunch sessions where people would come and just do a brown bag thing. And everybody's schedule is absolutely crazy. I get that. But I'm tossing around the idea of maybe doing a couple throughout the fall semester, and then obviously in the spring as well, of just saying, hey, you know, we're gonna have a group of us in ADA or the Rock around lunch just to talk about how things are going with FYS. If you're free, stop in. And that way we can bounce more things. You know, just like you heard from Amanda and Tasha, some of these tips of the trade that are so simple but really have a huge impact. It's great sometimes to hear from your colleagues, and sometimes it's even more impactful when you're actually in it. Right now, you know, we've thrown so much information at you already from last week to today, then obviously to Thursday, but it's really not going to really make sense and be complete until you're in the heat of the class. So I'm tossing around some of those ideas. If I have some interest, then we'll do that. And you know, if it doesn't stick, then we won't have to do it. But I just wanted you all to be aware of that that's another resource that we're thinking about doing. So, and then lastly, what's not listed on there, be absolutely proud of these wonderful strategies that you come up with. Share them with your colleagues. Because everything that they were talking about, and a lot of things I've talked about today, it's because, you know, we threw it out there and it worked. Students liked it. They responded. It helped with the engagement piece. So share those types of things with your colleagues, and don't at all feel like you're infringing upon, you know, what they're doing in their class. Again, we've all got the core curriculum. We all need to follow that. But there's these little tidbits of fun little things that you can do to keep the students involved with you and their peers to ensure that this experience is exactly how we want it to be with first year seminar. So I guess that kind of leads us back. It was perfect timing when you came in, Dr. Couch. We've talked about pretty much everything today except for evaluating, grading, and providing feedback. So if you could give us some more insight on what your expectations are and what you hope to see, that would be wonderful.
Yeah, sure. Sorry, I'm really, really late today. I got called into an unexpected meeting, which happens a lot, but, so I really don't know what all you all covered, but let me just add to what Michelle was saying. With a lot of times you all will face student situations that you're not prepared for, and your colleagues will be a tremendous resource. So if you're worried about a student, certainly Michelle or Sarah Larson could be really good contacts, but you know, don't hesitate to reach out on the group me or to come to the brown bag and just say, I have this issue with this student and I don't know what to do. What tips do you have for me? Because it may be that somebody's been there before and they can give you like 20 tips and you can pick and choose what's most comfortable to you. I have found myself that sitting in on those kinds of exchanges is really valuable. And first of all, it will give you confidence because you'll know you're not alone. You're not a failure just because your student isn't responding to you. There's, you know, it's nice to hear sometimes that other people have empathy for you. They also have really constructive ideas that they can share. So I really encourage you to take part of that. So one of the pieces that probably many of our instructors don't love is the grading piece of the class because it's time consuming. So I'll just go ahead and say up front, it's time consuming, but it's a really important part of how you're going to mold and shape these students into success. They don't know what they're not doing. They don't understand what it looks like to be a successful college student unless you tell them and correct them if they're off base. And so it's important to take the time and not just to say, you know, you get a C, period. you get to see, and here's why, and here's what you could do better next time. Here's how you might structure, here's an example of what an A looks like. That's the kind of thing that we're gonna hope that you'll do with your feedback. So, you may have gone through, I don't know, Xavier, did you go through the kinds of assignments yet?
We did briefly in the last training.
Okay. Most of the feedback that you will provide will be on written work that they do, kind of essays that they submit. They're usually multi-part essays. We ask them to identify the parts of the question. They don't always. So like there'll usually be 4 parts in most questions, A, B, C, D. And we ask them to sort of identify what's their answer to A, what's their answer to B, et cetera. But sometimes they're all over the place and you have no idea.
And they always have a rubric.
Yes, we give them the rubric right up front to tell them how it's going to be graded. So one of the things that you might teach them to do when they don't do it through your feedback is to label or mark the parts of their responses, because that is a frequent, if there is a frequent offense, that is one of them. They don't clearly indicate, I'm answering this question with this answer. Another kind of frequent thing that they do is they write like they text. We have in the directions or the prompt to every single essay that you should not do that, but they don't read it. They don't read the directions. And so you should talk about that in class as a piece of feedback before they do the assignment, and then after when they offend. In that way, you should talk about that as not an appropriate strategy. It is truly an essay assignment, so we want them to write, because this is where they're going to share the ideas that they have, enough for you to tell if they're getting it. Nearly always the goal of the essay assignments is to make sure that they're taking what they're hearing and applying it to their circumstances. So that's mostly what you're going to be assessing or gauging, is like, can they see how this applies to themselves? And so when they just text out, a very short answer, you're not going to have the details that you need to make that determination. So you need to correct that in their habits and say, no, I need lots of detail, I need lots of explanation from you. Don't assume I understand or that I know what you're thinking, or even that I know your text speak, because even if you do, that's not appropriate college writing. And you're molding and shaping them for what they're going to have to do in other classes. So if you don't stop it early, then when they get into, their psychology class or their political science class or whatever, they're going to do it again, and that's going to cost them. So I really encourage you to nip those bad habits early. I don't want them obviously just writing a bunch of gibberish just to be long. So another thing that you can do is try to give them feedback about the quality of what they're writing, whether it's on task or not. You're not teaching or writing one class, but you can certainly give them general constructive feedback about, a lot of what you're writing isn't on topic, or that kind of thing. But the real meat of the grading is going to be, have they understood the content? Can they reflect it back to you? And can they apply what has happened to their own circumstances? And so in the rubrics, it always kind of gives you a frame of reference for what an A looks like, a B looks like, a C, a D, and then you could just give them a 0 if they don't do it, or if they're like so far off base, then you don't even think they deserve points. But we always say, like, if you were to get a perfect score, here's what it would look like. They would have answered it this way. Their response would be chock full of details. They'll get the facts right, they'll get the application right, and so they deserve the points. This class ought to be easy for students. I mean, to be frank, every student ought to be able to get 100% on every assignment.
But they don't.
But they don't. Sometimes it's because they're not reading. Sometimes it's because they don't know how to read, which is where the ladies will come in. And then sometimes they don't know how to write. But often it's because they can't connect the dots. And so that's where you're going to try to figure out what kind of feedback to give, you know? It seems like you didn't read the assignment carefully. Successful students read the assignment, you know? I know it's lengthy, but take the time because it gives you all the clues. Sometimes they don't look at the rubric in advance. And so I would coach them to look at the rubric first, how to find the rubric. So the rubric will always be linked in the instructions. And it says something like how your assignment will be graded or something like that, isn't that right?
Yes.
Yeah, those words like, this is how your assignment will be graded, click here.
Yep.
So they can actually see like, what am I supposed to do? But you kind of have to coach them up on this, get them used to doing that so that they have that frame of reference when they start. And then let's imagine you've read through everything and you've decided like, I don't think this matches up to the perfect score. I'm gonna dock them points for that. You have to figure out how far down you're gonna go. So if it looks like a B paper, you've got a description, you know, to follow. If it's a C paper, you have a description to follow. I have had a lot of instructors like want to go in between. It's like, it's not exactly B, but it's not exactly the C. You have the flexibility to go in between if you want. I don't know what message that sends to students, but you know, if it's a 30-point assignment and you're giving them like 18.5, I don't know. Is that better than 18? Maybe. Is it worse than 19? Yeah, like, I don't know. So you need to really think about that. Will it really have that big of an impact on them to know how to do better next time? But the feedback that you're giving isn't probably in most cases about the content. I mean, sometimes it will be. Sometimes it's like, boy, you didn't even know the facts here, right? But that's really rarely what the issue is. It's often about them being able to connect the dots or present it to you in a way that looks like a college student's successful writing.
Or totally giving surface level responses that you can tell they've literally not taken the time, effort, or thought to complete the assignment. And I call them on it and say, you know, I know you can dig deeper than this, and this is what I hope to see next time.
Yeah, and so that's where the feedback comes in. For every one of these essay assignments, there's a box that appears right below what they wrote, where you're going to type in your feedback. Different instructors have done this differently. Sometimes what people will do is they will open up, say, like a Word file and type in their feedback, and then cut and paste it in so that they can have time to think about it, erase it without, you know, accidentally sending it in, that kind of thing. What I got in the habit of doing when I was teaching a lot was I developed first, before I even read any, kind of like common responses that I thought I was likely to have to give over and over and over. And I would write those out. Like, this looks more like a text than an essay, you know, that kind of. It seems as though you didn't read the instructions when you answered, or maybe you didn't use the rubric. I would kind of sketch all that out in advance, and then I could just cut and paste it in, so I wouldn't have to keep like writing the same thing. And after you grade the first 2 or 3 assignments, you'll know what you're likely to see. Yeah.
In the Start Here area for students, there are some tutorials. In those tutorials is a video instruction on how to check your grades. Encourage them to look at that, even if they already know how to check their grades, because that video also explains how to see the feedback that Lori's talking about giving.
Yeah.
Whenever the first few times I taught this, I kept getting comments in the feedback that I wasn't giving feedback, but I was. They just didn't know where to find it.
Yes.
That's so yeah, you may write this long, you know, thing about all the ways they could improve and what you would like to see, but if they never see that, how are they going to get better? So I would encourage you to plan out kind of the sort of things that you think are generally going to need to be said, draft that, have it ready to cut and paste in, and then customize or tailor each student's response based on what you see in their essay. Before you leave their work, you're going to want to leave them feedback and add points into the little box where the points go. You need to do both. And you need to do it for every question that they have, so that they're getting both kinds of information. What's the point value? That's really what they care about. But in my mind, the feedback that molds and shapes them into a better student is far more important than the points. I would personally like to see you kind of be hard in your grading at first. You can slack off a little bit later, but like kind of put the fear of God into that at the beginning. Like, whoa, I'm gonna have to really step up my game here, because if you don't, they're gonna blow off the assignments later.
Do they tend to wanna rewrite?
That's up to you. There is a deadline for the assignment. Once the deadline has passed, it's not open to them to do again. But, you know, if that's a strategy you want to use in your class, you're welcome to, and Xavier can teach you how to reopen it.
The deadline for most all of our assignments is Sunday by 11:59. So we give them through the weekend, and that includes the reading assignments as well. I would encourage you to stick to that too, that they get programmed to know that every week, because we'll tell them in the beginning, or you will, that each week there are assignments, and they're all going to be due by Sunday at 11:59 p.m.
I like to be a bit lenient with the dates, but I've learned to do it in chunks. So since we have 16 weeks, I will divide it up by 4, which is really easy because we have surveys every 4 weeks.
Yeah.
So I will say, you can turn it in again, or you can turn it in late or whatever, with some deductions obviously, but as long as you do it before the upcoming survey on week 4, 8, and so on. That's made it a lot more manageable for me.
So that would be your call. The course is generally not set up for retakes.
Correct.
And here's why. The majority of their other classes are not gonna allow retakes.
Yeah.
The high school did, so they're gonna expect them, but you probably need to teach them, no, when you sit down to do an assignment,
That's it.
you're doing it. And so if you do
It's a
give
whole lot
them
more work if
retakes.
you do the read.
Well,
Yeah,
that was gonna be my other point.
Yeah.
That's more work on you.
yeah.
But if you teach them that they're gonna get retakes, they won't take it as seriously the first time, and you're probably teaching them bad habits. So I would encourage you to really use that carefully. There might be cases where somebody had like a technical glitch or something like that. That's when I would probably open it back up for them.
Definitely don't announce it that you're doing
Oh,
it.
no.
Yeah, because then everybody will go, oh, she could open it back up again.
Say, hey, I'm not tech savvy, I'll just let them know that right in the beginning.
Yeah. So, the other thing about feedback that I would really strongly encourage you to consider as you're preparing this is, you may be very frustrated with the student when you're responding, but you don't want that to come through when you're writing. Because this is meant to be a positive, formative experience. We don't want to lead them down the path by punishment. We want to lead them by encouragement. And we want to be very clear about what it is we want to see, not what they did wrong.
Something I would do when I had extreme frustration is I would write down my feedback, because I'm a paper and pen gal, and I'd write it, and I would take a time out. I put myself in time out because I had to de-escalate myself, because I'm like, what the heck are you doing?
Yeah.
But yeah, that's the way I deal with it.
Yeah, especially if you've given the feedback before.
Yes, it's like, come on.
So remember I said sometimes people will have like a Word file open, but that won't be where they're typing. What I used to do, because it's my version of timeout, I used to put what I really thought,
Yeah.
and then I would rewrite it.
Yeah.
You know?
I just won't do that on the,
This
because
is
I
the
know
worst
I'll
paper
send
I've
it.
ever
I
seen.
know I'll send it. I'm like, oh my God, I cannot send that.
That's why I don't put it in
Yeah.
like accidentally, you know?
This is word vomit. What are you doing? You know?
Right, and then
They do.
you rewrite that into, you know, perhaps in future drafts, you could work on being more on focus or more on topic. Or there's great room for improvement here if you will simply do X, Y, and Z next time. So if you can kind of spin it, if you have that tendency to be kind of negative or punitive in your approach, I think maybe that second file that you open with me, yes, Mark.
They teach the rubric first and have them highlight all the action verbs and all the words that are really.
Good point.
Yeah.
When I give feedback,
For 23 years. so
yeah,
we use
when
a
I
lot
give
of rubrics.
feedback, I use the rubric to give it. And so I will say, you know, I wasn't able to give you full credit. here is what was requested of you, and here is what you provided. So I try not to say you didn't do, or you were missing, but, you know, in order to receive full credit, next time you need to blank.
Is it okay that we go over the rubric with the enhanced students? Because we've been planning that
Absolutely.
in our plans that we're doing.
Everybody can.
I mean,
Yeah.
we'll literally teach,
How to read the rubric.
Mhm.
Yeah,
that's
absolutely.
okay,
Yeah,
okay, that's
they
what
do.
we were planning.
Some of the instructional parts are doing, we should do something.
But everybody can do that. So your idea of talking about the verbs, a lot of times it's describe or discuss, you know, so what does that look like? What does it look like in your writing to describe something? I mean, it's not a one sentence deal, right?
It's not a sentence.
Yeah, and so absolutely, I think that's fantastic. It just, my office handles student complaints. And so, often what I hear from students isn't like the teacher didn't teach me the content. It was the teacher was rude and disrespectful to me because they lost patience with the student. And they popped off their true feelings about the student's work instead of taking the time to be encouraging and to teach the student how to improve. So, you know, without continuing to beat the same drum here, just like my goal for you is that you, in your feedback, try to be as encouraging as possible, but spell out for them what's missing. Okay, so if you want to be the most successful student, here's what you would do differently. I always try to avoid saying, if you want full points, here's what you would do. Instead, I try to say, if you want to be the most successful student, because they're very grade oriented. And that's not what we're supposed to be about, right? I hope that's helpful. Xavier and Michelle, do you have specific examples you want to bring up of cases of your past? Because I'm sure that.
I had talked earlier about, I've literally had the copy paste from, you know, printed work or something like that. And, you know, it's amazing to me how the students truly don't get it. And I always question, is this what they've been allowed to do in the past? And I can't really assume that. I have to take it as a responsibility that it's my charge now to make sure they know how to do this correctly. And so I try to be very constructive with that. And so it goes back to what Dr. Couch is saying in times like that, when they literally have taken no time, and to be honest, infringed upon academic integrity, it's my opportunity to say, there is a way you should be doing this differently. And so I spell it all out if I can, and then I usually use that opportunity to talk to the student too. Yes?
I know usually in syllabi, there's something on academic integrity and plagiarism. Could that be included in this? Or is that?
Absolutely, and we do that whole week too, for academic integrity that's built into the syllabus, but yeah, I thought it
The
was.
syllabus is going to have a blurb about that you will discuss the first week. The assignment prompt also reminds them that they should do their own work. And then I hope you'll reinforce that when you talk about their assignments. But there are going to be cases, I don't know who's going to get them. You know, like, let's roll the dice
The
and see
lucky
which one of you's
contestant.
going to get them. There are going to be cases where you're grading people's assignments and you're like, boy, I think I've already read that. And you're like, So then you go back and you compare them and they're almost word for word. Or maybe like, this is a little too sophisticated for this student.
Is there a
So you
checker?
Google it, you cut and paste it, and you Google it, and you're like, that's why, because it was that webpage that they copied it from.
Right there on Wikipedia.
There's actually that tool in Blackboard too, that
That's
you
right.
can assignment, I can't remember the name of it, but it'll tell you how much of a match it has to something that's been previously written.
Just put in the first
Well, it automatically picks it up though on Blackboard. What's the
Really?
name of that?
So Xavier, you can
Safe
talk
Assign.
about that a little bit.
Safe
That's
Assign.
it, safe assign.
We did
It's
not,
already in there.
we did not apply Safe Assign as part of the settings of the assignments because it's a bit more complex than what we're already doing.
You can just do it on the.
But if you're familiar with that application, all you need to do is edit the assignment. It won't make any changes to the actual assignment. It's just about how you grade. If you're interested in that, I'd be happy to talk to you about it, but it's not something we planned on training.
Yeah.
Here's the other thing too, going back to what Dr. Couch is saying, none of this is brain science or that involved, that they couldn't really do this on their own. And that's what I try to tell the student, if you would take time and really read the assignment, just from our discussions in class, you could probably ace the whole thing. And so letting them know that we've set them up for success because we're providing every tool that they need to do well in this course within the constraints of the class, maybe helps to be a reminder to them. That's been helpful for me in the past, but I did have one situation, it's been several years ago, where I had two roommates, two best friends, same hometown. They literally submitted the exact same assignment to me, both of them. So I pulled them out after class and I said, you know, I need some clarity here. What's happened? We worked on it together. I can tell, you know, and so, but that, it really didn't resonate with them. And so that was a learning moment that I took full charge of to make sure that they understood this is not going to fly in this class or any other class that you have. So it's fine to study together, but let me define for you what that should be. And they got it together after that, I can tell you, because clearly I told them, I said, you know, this is grounds for me to fail you in this course. And that really struck a chord. And so they did much better after that. I don't know necessarily that they worked on, you know, separately every single time, but I know that they thought about it before they did anything like that again.
So we have a new academic misconduct policy that will go into effect in 2 weeks. And you're gonna get a copy of that, so you would know if you had a case, what to do. I will tell you, it's not as easy as what it says in black and white, because you need to weigh the learning moment versus the punitive piece that's in the misconduct policy. So like in Michelle's case, she warned them, right? And they straightened up and she didn't turn them in. She could have,
Yeah.
but she didn't turn them in. But now that's stuck with them, right? If she had turned them in, we probably would have lost that student. We probably would have never turned them around in a way that could make them a success. So, I mean, you have to weigh that and think carefully about whether it's really worth it. If you find out somebody's running a ring where they're like writing everyone's assignment, that's a little more significant, and you know, that's probably when I would pull the plug. I'd probably myself give a warning, unless it's just like word for word or something, you know, it's like, man, wow, this is so blatant. But it will make you angry when somebody does it to you, because you will feel offended. Because this is, now you've taken ownership of this class and you're really trying to pull these students along, right? And they just threw it away. They threw it back in your face. And so you will find that you will have emotions about that you'll have to get in check and try to be as objective as possible and take the emotion out of it and think, if it's, you know, Susie Q, that's not my student, how should it be handled? And then that will give you guidance about how you should handle your student's case. As much as possible, you know, when you have those situations, talk it out with Michelle or some other instructors and, you know, get some ideas from people about ways that you could approach it. When there is a plagiarism situation, you need to put it in writing that you believe it was plagiarized, but you also need to talk to the student. So you're going to want to document it. And if you do end up turning the student in, there's a documenting procedure that will then go on their permanent record. So, you know, that's hardcore, right? So we want to be really thoughtful about whether it's, has it risen to that level where you can't turn the student around and it's really going to, you know, be worth putting it on their permanent record. In some cases, absolutely, because it's so blatant and the student's just not getting it, especially if they're a repeat offender, like, do it. But sometimes it's just worth having that conversation, you go, what are you doing? Many of these assignments, they're giving their opinion, so like, why would you go get that off the internet,
Yes,
you know?
yes.
They're talking about like, how did that apply to your life this week? You don't need to go to the internet for that, but they do sometimes because they lack confidence.
Yeah.
And especially if they haven't been strong writers in the past, or if they're struggling with reading, they may not have the confidence to really tackle it themselves. If they're first generation students, this may be new territory for them, and they may be like, she's gonna find me out, that I'm a fraud if I answer this question. I'm not kidding, like really, they think that. Somehow they're gonna find out that I'm an imposter and I shouldn't be here if I write what I really think. And so sometimes they'll just take the easy road because of that. And so you probably could do a lot in your class time, in your class meeting, to kind of let them know, no matter what you write, it's cool. It's safe. What you write is really what you think. It's really how you think this content applies to your life. And then you can always, give them feedback on that, but make it a safe space where they don't worry that you're gonna think they're a fraud for responding that way. In terms of like consistent things, I think that students are telling us, again, it's they don't think they're getting feedback. So when you leave the feedback, it's important, I think, the first time and maybe the second and third time to show what that looks like in class. You should probably not show a real student because there's a FERPA issue when you do. But maybe Xavier, could we get a video that would show where to go and look?
It's already there, it's in the
That's the one
start
you were
here.
talking about? Okay, so you could maybe show that so they could see, oh, I go here and click this, and they need to get in the habit of that. What I did to try and make sure my students were reading my feedback is I put a question at the end. And I said, could you please email me the answer to this question? And when I didn't hear from them, I would know they didn't see my feedback. So maybe that's a strategy you could use to ensure that it's really getting through to them. It might be helpful for your reading folks to use the content of the feedback sometimes as a tool. So does that help you all? So in terms of the pointing and clicking and where you're going to leave the feedback, we have a tutorial for you in the instructor resource area on your Blackboard shell. So you just watch a video and it shows you literally where to go and how to do it. The technical side of it, but the art of it is what I'm talking about. How to develop your philosophy of feedback and kind of what we're hoping for in this class. I don't want this class to be a baby class. I don't want it to be one of those where people are like, this class isn't worthwhile. I want it to really mold and shape them, and that relies a lot on your feedback.
Will we be able to see their feedback?
Of your assigned classes, yes.
Yep. So for the essays, that's kind of where I hope you go. There are other assignments that are auto-graded. I don't know if that's the word you would use, Xavier, but they're programmed because they're multiple choice or true false, that kind of thing. When the student answers it and submits it, it automatically scores it. That doesn't mean you can't leave feedback. And in fact, sometimes it's important to do that. Because if you're seeing a consistently low score out of the student, or if you see that they are missing a concept that was really critical to their success, you can leave them feedback that would really help them. And maybe it's just that they overlooked something, or they read all the readings but one, or something like that, and it's just like really important content. I'm thinking, for example, there's a really important reading on defaulting on your student loans.